So what we have discussed in our last session, we have discussed, right, what is ASP.NET Core identity, how to set up ASP.NET Core identity in our MVC and Web API applications, right? And then we have discussed how the identity tables are going to be generated, what are the different tables, and what is the relationship between these tables. This is what we have discussed, right? So now if you look at this identity table, so we are having this ASP.NET user table. So this table contains some data, and this is the data which is specifically, or you can say, related to a particular user. So whoever the user going to log in into our application, that user information or those user information we need to store inside this ASP.NET user store. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how a user can register into the application and how the data is going to be stored inside this what I can say database table. And then also I'm going to discuss how I can customize this columns, right? Custom columns means what how I can right. See, I cannot remove any column, but what I can do is I can add few columns to this database table. That is what we are also going to discuss. So let us first understand how we can provide the registered login logout functionality in our application, right? So what we want to do is we want to provide the user with one user registration page, which looks something like this, where we will ask the user to enter the email, password, and confirm password. So this is the basic or minimum information what we need to take from the user. Hmm. Right. Currently, we are taking this piece of information, but as we progress, we are also going to take the first name, last name, right, the date of birth, phone number, all these things we are going to take. But let's start with this minimum information. So once the user provide the email, password, and confirm password, we want to do proper validation. Validation means the email must be a valid format. Email, whatever the user is entering, that should not be exist already in the database. That is the validation. Password should follow the password policy, which is set by identity core. Minimum minimum six word. It should contain special character. It should contain digit. It should contain uppercase and lowercase character. That password policy by default set by identity. That what we need to follow. Confirm password should and must be matched with the password. So these are the few validations which is also going to be checked by ASP.NET Core identity. And once we click on this register button, what we need to do, we need to take this data and we need to store this information in the ASP.NET users database table. So let us proceed and see how we can do this, right? So first of all, what we need, so we need a model for this view. And we need a model for this view. We can also call this as a registration view model, right? Register view model. And the view model is going to contain the email field, password field, confirm password field. Okay. So let me first create a class with the name registered view model within the models folder. This is my application. Let me go ahead and create a class file, registered view model. So this class file right here, what I'm doing, I'm putting these three fields which is required for registration with proper data annotation, right? So you can see here I'm having this email, which is a required field, and this is the also a valid email address. Password, this is a required field, and the password is going to be displayed as a dotted instead of the plain text. This is confirm password, which is also you can see data type display, compare. You can also apply the required attribute, right? So because this is also required, right? Without this attribute, we cannot write the proceed because password means you have to enter the password, which is a required field. But if once we provide the value, this confirm password value is going to compared with this password value. If both the value are matched, then this is a valid value. Otherwise, right, we can return this error message password and confirm password not right? So here we have applied some kind of a data annotation attribute. Is that clear? Anything is confusing here? Anything you are not understanding? What is the use of a required attribute? What is the use of a email attribute, right? What is the use of a display attribute? And what is the use of a data type attribute? Clear? See, display name means, right, if I'm using this model, right, in the UI, so instead of a confirm password, whatever name I provided here, that is going to be displayed. Clear, guys?
Yes.
Right? So that is what it is going to display. Okay, let me put this thing here, right? So whatever changes I have done, let's keep it with it. Okay. Now what I'm going to do, right? So all the user related functionality, starting from registration, login, logout, right? To forget password, change password, right? All these things I'm going to put inside a specific controller called account controller. So what I'm going to do, I will create one MVC account controller. Inside that account controller, all the account related functionality like creating a new account, right? Deleting an account, right? Oh, login functionality, logout functionality, right? Forgot password. All these things we are going to put inside this account controller, right? So what I'm going to do currently is I'm going to create the account controller, and inside this account controller, I'm going to provide one action method called register, and this registered action method going to display, or you can say going to render this registration view, right? So later I will show you how to create the post version, which is going to accept the model data and going to create the user in the database using ASP.NET Core identity. Let me first create the account controller, and this controller is going to be created inside the controllers folder. Go ahead and create a controller, MVC controller empty. Click on this OK button and create the controller. So this is my account controller. And now what I'm going to do, I'm going to create one action method that is registered. And this action method is going to render the view, right? So let me go ahead and create the view. So this is my view. And guys, tell me for this view, which one is going to be the model? For this view, which one is going to be the model?
Register.
Register view model. That what we have just a register view model is going to be the model. Okay. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to use registered view model as the model, and I'm going to create a HTML right form. And within that form, I'm going to provide three text boxes. One is for email, one is for password, another one is for confirm password. And also I'm going to provide proper validation summary as individual validation. So this is validation summary. All the validation messages are going to be displayed here. And here you can see I have created three controls, sorry, three sections. One is for email, another is for password, and another one is for confirm password. And here I'm using HTML tag helper, and error message specific to the right, what I can say, control is also going to be displayed. And here you can see the model is a registered view model. And when we click on this register submit button, the data will be submitted to the registered action method of account controller, which is decorated with a which is decorated with a post attribute. So now, if you look at this account controller, is there any register action method which is decorated with post action? No. So now what we need to do is we need to create the post action method, right? I mean register action method, which is going to be decorated with HTTP post attribute within the account controller. And this register action method is going to take this register view model as the model object. And then using this register view model data, we are going to store the data into the ASP.NET, right? What I can say, users table. But before that, what I need to do is, right, how this view is going to be rendered. So for rendering this view, we need to provide one link, right? So if you look at this, so what I'm going to do to render this view within the menus, I'm going to provide a link, and that link is going to be, right, what I can say, this is, right? So this is going to be my link, and this link is going to, all right, when it is clicked, it is going to render the right account controller registered action method. Now run the application and see if this is working fine or not. See, this is home privacy, and this is my registered button. So once I click on this user registration page is coming, right? So this is how the page looks. But now I cannot do anything because the registration post action method is not defined. So next what I need to do, I need to define the registration post action method. Is that clear, guys? What changes I have done so far? I have created one registered view model, which is required for the right registration view. Then I created the account controller with registered action method, which is the get version, which is going to render the view. And when I call this registered action method, it is going to render this view. The model for this one is registered view model. I have only specified the class name, not the fully qualified class name, I mean namespace. Why? Because we have already this view import statement, which is already registering the namespace where the model is created, right? Then what I have done to render this view, I need one link in the menu. So for that purpose, what I have done, I have created this registered, right? What I can say, a link on the menu, and when the user click on this registered button, it is going to hit or it is going to invoke the register action method of the account controller, right? So now when the registered action method of account controller is hit, this page is going to be rendered, and when this page is rendered, it is also having this registered button, which is going to invoke the register action method of account controller, but this time that method should be decorated with post attribute. So that method is not available. So next, what we need to do, right? We need to create this method, right? So now, right, before proceeding further, now what we need to do is we need to understand what method we need to use to create a, or what method we need to use to register a user. So guys, remember, if you remember, right, we have provided three services. One is user manager, another one is role manager service, another one is sign in manager, right? So user related functionality means which manager class I need to use, user manager. So a role related functionality means this class. Sign in manager means this class. Am I right? So now if I want to create a new user, then what in service class I need to use, user manager. And this user manager class, right, provide one method called create async. So this method I need to use. So this create async method accept two parameters. What are the parameter? One is T user, another one is string password. So this T user instance is nothing but an instance of a identity user class or a class that is inherited from the identity user class. So currently we have not created or we have not extended our identity user class. We are going with the default identity user class. So in this case, this T user, this create async method is expecting, it's nothing but an instance of identity user class, and the second one is the password, right? Whatever password the user has provided, that password we need to pass as the second parameter. And this method, it is going to return one task of identity result when awaited, right? Once I use the await keyword, then it is going to return me one identity result, and this identity result is going to tell you, right, what is happening to this create async operation, whether the user is created successfully in the database. I mean, validation is right. So validation is fine, data is fine, user created successfully, or something went wrong. Something went wrong means the data is invalid, email is not valid format, email is already taken by someone else, password is not following the appropriate format, right? So this information, if it is not valid, right, then why it is not valid? That error information, it is going to return that error information we can also access. So what method I need to use to create a user? I need to use the create async method. That is what I'm showing here. Clear? Clear or not?
Yes, sir.
Right, so here it is going to take, so how to access this identity result and how to verify, right, whether the user is created successful, I will show you practical, but currently this method is expecting two parameter. One is the identity user, which we need to create an instance and pass, and the second one is the password, right? So guys, remember, in most of the real-time application, once the user is registered, do we need to automatically log in that user, or again he has to log in? Guys, tell me.
If he has remembered,
So
how will
once
he
the
get?
user is created in the database, do we need to allow the user to log in automatically? That means the once the created means it will behave like a logged in user, or once the user is created, do I need to ask the user to log in again? What will be the ideal scenario?
Second part, like we have to ask him to log in again once it is created with the
Okay, that is
user
all
ID
fine.
incorrect.
Okay, that is fine. That is what we will discuss later, right? So how you can explicitly ask the user to log in. But some of the application also there, right? Where, right, what we are doing exactly. Once the user is registered, means he provided the email address, he provided the password and everything. So let the user write login automatically. So that is also possible. So both of the scenario can exist in the industry, right? So once the user is created, right, we can confirm his account by sending one confirmation link to his user email address. And once he confirm, then he can log in. Another option is there, right? Once the user registered, ask them to log in again, right? Another option is there, right? Once the user created, let the user log in automatically. All these options I'm going to discuss one by one. Let us start with the automatic login process, right? So what I'm going to do, once the user is created successfully, so once I verify the identity result, and if I get that information successful, means user is created successful. Now I want to log in this user automatically. For logging that user, for login functionality, which manager class I need to use? Sign in manager, right? So this sign in manager class provide one method called sign in async. So using this sign in async method, right, we can right login the user automatically. So while I'm using the sign in async method, this method doesn't expect the parameter called password, right? Without password, we can log in the user, right? So why? Because we are automatically login. So in that case, right, we don't want to take the password. So here, what I'm doing, let's try to understand. So here, the first one is the identity user, right, which we have already, because in this case, we are using the same identity user to create the user. The same identity user, I need to pass to this is async method. And here it's persistent cookie. So this is persistent. It's going to take two parameter. One is true and false. True means it is going to create a persistent cookie. False means it is going to create a session cookie. So what is the difference between a persistent cookie and a session cookie? Persistent cookie means what? Means once you close the browser, it will stay in the browser, and when you again visit to that website, automatically you will be work like a logged in user. Non-persistent cookie or session cookie means what? Once you close the browser, that authentication cookie, that cookie what is right, it is stored in the web browser to log in the user, the cookie is going to be deleted automatically. So that's what you need to remember. So right, anyone you can choose here. You can send it true or you can send false, right? Let as we are automatically login the user, let it keep this as a false, right? Later when the user login, at that time we will provide one remember me checkbox, and once the user click on that remember me checkbox, then at that time we are going to log in the user as a authenticated user. But for now, right, what I'm going to do, I'm setting this value to false, and is string authentication mode equals to null. Means what, right, guys? Remember, as we progress, right, we are going to discuss how the user is going to be authenticated, whether password-based authentication, whether two-factor authentication, right? So, what is password-based authentication? What is two-factor authentication? Everything we are going to discuss. So, for now, for the time being, we are not sending any password. So, or we are. This is not for the two-factor authentication. So, what I'm going to do, I'm going to set this third parameter value as null. So, currently, if I want to automatically log in the user, right, then what I need to do, I need to pass the identity object, right, identity user object. This is generally going to set as false, and this value I'm going to set as null, right? So this is what I'm going to specify at this point of time. Later, as we progress, right, I'll show you how you can make use of this persistent cookie, how to implement password-based authentication, how to implement two-factor, or you can say external authentication. Everything is possible, and we will discuss one by one. So now, is that clear? What is the syntax of this right method? And this method, you can see it is not going to return anything. The return type is task. Task means what? It is going to void return method. Clear, guys?
Yes.
Right. So let us see how we can do this. So for this purpose, right, I'm going to modify the account controller. So let me go ahead. This is my account controller. First of all, you can see I have created two variable. One is user manager, and another one is sign-in manager, right? And then I have initialized these two things, right, using my constructor, right? So here you can see, right, the constructor is initializing the identity user manager, sign-in manager also, and who is the responsible for providing the instance, the ASP.NET Core framework is responsible for right registering the user in, I mean, injecting the identity user for user manager instance, sign-in manager instance, and he will be responsible. Why? Because we have already registered this thing right into the services. The services will be responsible for managing all these things, right? So he is going to responsible for managing all the identity user related activities or everything, right? Any instance user manager, sign-in manager, that is going to be injected by the framework, right? So this method we have already discussed, which is going to render the queue where the user is going to register itself. And this is my registered action method. First of all, I'm checking if the model state is valid or not. If the model state is valid, then what I'm doing here, creating one instance of a identity user. Now you can see, let's remember whatever the email ID, right? It is here, this username and this email field, these are very important field, right? So these are very important field, right? Now if you look at this, this is my primary key, and here you can see it is also applying some kind of a right unique, right? So you can see username. So on the username column, it is applying some unique index. The email also it is going to be non-unique, right? So but it is also having some index, right? So what I want to do is, so while I'm registering the user, what I'm checking here, I'm storing both the email and the username in the same field, right? The same email address I'm storing in the username as well as in the email field. Right. So if you and what is your requirement? If you don't want to store the email field, right, rather than you want to create a username which is going to stored in the username, no issue. You can create a another field for the username, and that username you can store in the username field. But for simply right, what I'm doing at this point of time. So whatever email I'm taking, that is also going to be the username for my application. So using that email, right, the user is also going to log in into my application. So fundamental thing what you need to remember, I'm not creating two different field for username and email. Whatever the email address the user is providing, that email address I'm using for both username and email purpose. Clear?
Yes,
Yes
sir.
or no? So this is, so first of all, I need to create an instance of a identity user. So once I create the instance of a identity user, then I can make use of create async method, right? So that is what you can see. I'm using this user manager service, user manager dot create async. So whatever the user object that what I'm passing, and whatever the password provided by the user, that password also I'm call passing using the model dot password. And here I'm using the await operator, so that until this operation is not completed, I cannot proceed to the next statement. Once it is completed, it is going to return me one identity result. You can say identity result. Identity result that succeed means if the operation was successful, means what? If the user was successfully created in the database, then what I need to do, I need to provide, I want to automatically sign in the user. So for this purpose, right, what I'm using sign-in manager dot sign-in async method. So here you can see this is my sign-in manager service, and using this variable, right, I can, or you can using this object, I can call the sign-in async method. I'm using await. Like here, if you look at the method signature, the return type is void. Void means I cannot read what I can say, store the result in somewhere because the method return type is void. So void means in this case, right, it is going to automatically sign in. So here, user, this is the user object, and is persistent is false. And the third parameter, I'm not passing anything. Why? By default, this is null, so no need to pass the value null. So once the user is sign in, then what I'm doing, I'm redirecting to the index action method of our home controller, right? So index action method of our home controller. Guys, see, whenever I'm specifying IS capital, HS capital, doesn't matter. If you specify in lowercase also, that is going to be fine because this is going to be part of our URL, and the URL is not case sensitive, right? So anything you can pass, right? So we'll redirect the user to the index action method of our home controller. If you look at this, so this is our home controller and this is my index action method, and this index action method also having one index view which will be rendered, right? So now once if if the result is not succeeded, means if the user was not created successfully, then what I need to do? I need to access all the error messages, and each error message I'm going to store in the description property, right? So in this case, I'm not going to provide any right model specific error, rather than I'm going to provide the detailed error message, and that is what I'm adding them into the model state, and then again I'm going to render the same view with whatever the data user is provided, right? So clear guys, how to implement that registered functionality, what method I need to use. And if I want to sign in the user without password, then what method I need to use. Is that clear?
Yes.
Right. So if you are developing the web API application, this is not required. But in web API application, the sign-in manager is not required. Only you need to create the user. Once the user is created, right, what you need to do, you need to return that user instance, or you can create a token. That a token you need to return, right? How to implement token JWT authentication? That is completely a different story altogether. That's what we are also going to discuss in our coming session. For now, this is MPC application. This is required. This is not required in case of a web API application, right? So with these changes, let me. Any question, guys? Before proceeding and showing the right user interface and creating the the right user. Any doubt? Any question? Okay. Let me run the application. So this is my registered button. Okay. Let me give you a valid email address. Info at the rate .net tutorials.net. This is my info at the rate .net tutorials.net. Password, let me give password as a capital A, B, C, T at the rate 1234. Confirm password, I'm also providing capital A, B, C, T at the rate 1234. So basically, whatever the policy, right, that provided by the password, everything I have provided, I have also provided a valid email address. Now I click on the registered button. So you can see, right, once I click on the registered button, it is redirecting to the home page. Means what? As it is redirecting to the home page means it is working fine. Now we need to verify the database. So it is not working. Okay, so what I need to do, I need to close this one and open this one. Okay, so this is my database. This is my identity DB. So what is the database we are using in this case? Identity DB. Okay. Now, if you look at this ASP.NET users table, we should have that entry. So this is my info address, and you can see normalized means what I have explained yesterday, or I mean the previous session. This is going to be in capital case, uppercase. So whatever username, that uppercase it is storing. Email address, you can see whatever email address, that uppercase it is storing. Email is confirmed. No, we have not yet confirmed the email by sending the confirmation link. So you can see the password has. I have provided a capital A, B, C, D at the rate 1234, but it is storing the password has. This is the security stamp. Security stamp means whenever this password is going to be changed, right? Then it is going to be changed. And this is concurrency stuff, means other than the password, right? Email, username, these things value has come changed, that this is going to be changed. Phone number we have not provided. Phone number is not yet confirmed. Two-factor authentication is not yet right enabled. Lockout we are not implementing at this point because we have not yet right, provided the sign-in functionality, right? So the data is there, and guys remember whatever the column value are not there, like phone number confirmed, two-factor lockout, right? All these things I'm going to discuss one by one when the time. So whenever the two-factor authentication come, at that time I'm going to show you how to implement, how to provide email confirmation, how to provide phone number confirmation, how this two-factor enabled property is going to work. Again, when I'm going to discuss account lockout, at that time this three field will come into the picture, how and what they are going to store. Everything I'm going to discuss in the respective session. For now, you can see the username field is there, email field is there, and password field is there, and this field we have provided data. Clear?
Yes.
Now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to create another user. Again, I'm providing the same value. I'm providing some test, only test I'm providing, capital TEST. Now, click on this registered button. See what it is saying. Password must be 6 character. Password must have at least one non-alphanumeric character. Password must have at least 1 digit. That means it is an invalid password. So what I'm doing here, I'm providing test at the rate 123. I'm providing test at the rate 123. Now you just tell me, if this email ID is already taken by another user, so in this case we are applying unique constant on the username, right? If you look at this table, right? So indexes, then you can see on the username, right? On the username column, it is applying a unique index. And whatever the username, right? Whatever the email we are taking, that email we are also storing in the username column. At this point, as already we have this username, if I registered with the same username, what should I get? It should successful, or it should give me some error that this email is already taken, right? What I need to get?
Error.
Error. Okay, let us register. Username is already taken. That message I'm getting. But am I set this message anywhere in my application? What are the
No,
password
default.
validation error messages
No.
we are getting? All those messages we are setting in our application? No. Who is handling all these things?
Identity.
ASP.NET Core entity. When it is handling all these things, now whenever we are calling the create async method. So this service method what provided by ASP.NET Core identity, that method implement all this logic. Right? So inside this method, right, all the logic have written. Right? And now, sir, without using this create async method, can we do this thing? Yes, you can do this, no issue. For that purpose, you need to handle all these things. Right? You need to check the data. You need to create the instance of DB context. You need to store the data in the database. Accordingly, you need to set the whether the operation was successful or failed. Everything you need to manage manually. Now, this thing is going to be treated by this create async method. Why? Because we are using ASP.NET Core identity. Now, identity will take the responsibility for handling the complicated things behind the scene, which will make our life easy, and we can use that ready-made identity in our application. Clear?
Yes.
Right? So this is how we created the user. What is the problem with this? Right? The problem with this approach is that, right, once the user is logged in, right, it is not showing, right, what I can say, once the user is logged in, then again, right, it is not showing the data. Means what? Still it is showing the registered button, or even though the user is registered. So once the user is logged in or sign in, do I need to show this registered button or do I need to show something else?
Sign
So
out
basic,
button.
so basically what my requirement is now I want to extend this application by providing the login and the logout functionality. We have provided the registration functionality. Now we need to provide the login and the logout functionality. So what kind of a login and logout functionality we need to provide? So we need to provide these two buttons from the beginning, right? When the user visit the page, right? Then I need to display this registered and the login functionality. And from this registered and login functionality, the user can click on the registered button to register himself if he is a new user. If he is already an existing user, then he needs to click on this login button. So once the user click on this login button, right, what I need to do, I need to render this page where the user needs entered his registered email address and the password. So this email address, what we are taking, So you can consider this is also going to be the username. So username. So this username and password, what we are taking, we are going to check in the database whether this is a valid email and password or not. And accordingly, we can validate the user. So guys, remember, don't be confused. So here, whenever I'm using email, you can also consider this is also going to be the username. Why? Because the same email address I'm storing in both the username as well as in the email field, right? And then this remember me checkbox is there. You can see when the user clicked on this checkbox, it is going to create a persistent cookie. Persistent cookie means what? Now, once the user browser closed, then again when the user visits the browser, when the user access the website, then again he will be logged in automatically. But if I'm creating this, if I'm not checking this checkbox, then it is going to create a non-persistent cookie. Non-persistent cookie means the user is valid or logged in till the user session is active. Right? Once the user close the browser, then again he has to log in. Right? Again he has to provide his username, password, and again he needs to click on the login button. Right? So once the user provide the valid email address and password and click the login button, then what I need to do? I need to hide this registered and login button, and I need to show this logout button, and along with this logout button, I want to show what is his registered username. Clear, guys? So
Yes.
this is what we are right using in our web application or something else. This is generally we need to provide some sign in or sign up, or you can say we are providing a login and registered. And once the user registered, then we need to display this logout button. Clear?
Yes,
So
sir.
what we want to achieve, is that clear? Yes or no, guys? Why I'm not getting any response?
Yes,
Yes.
yes, yes,
Okay. So how to implement this? So for this purpose, first of all, I need a view model for the login or not? Yes or no? We need a view model for this view or not? And that view model going to contain how many fields? Guys, tell me how many fields that view model is going to contain, and and what are these?
Three fields, email, password, remember me.
So email is going to be string, password is going to be string, and what type of a field this remember me?
It's Boolean.
Boolean, right? So we have to create one view model, and then how many action method I need to define? One action for this user login view, that is get. Another action method is for handling the post functionality, that is validating the user email address and login the user. And another action method for the logout functionality. I mean, when the user click on this logout button, that user is going to be logged out from the right from the system, right? So we need to create three action method, one login model and one view, and also we are going to modify the layout file so that this is so head functionality is going to be displayed. That is what we need to clear or not.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so let us start with this login view model, right? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a model where I need to create the model within the models folder. So this is going to be my login view model, and this login view model, right, going to contain three fields, right? Three fields. One is email, another is password. Both are going to be required field, and it should be valid email address, right? And then this is my remember me, and it is going to be a red boolean type of a field, right? So this is my view model. Right, guys, remember, in this case, once the user is logged in MVC application, once the user is logged in, what we need to do? We need to, right, once the user is logged in, we need to sign in the user. But in case of web API application, what we need to do? Once the user is logged in, we need to create JWT token, and that token we need to return to the client. So how to create the JWT token? How to return that JWT token to the client? What we need to include inside the JWT token, that is completely a different story altogether. And we are also going to discuss how to do, right, how to work with authentication and authorization, right, JWT and all these things. in our coming session, right? So don't worry about the things. But now what I'm saying, right? How you can implement. So here, once the user is logged in, we need to right. Once the user provide valid login information, we need to log in the user. But in case of web API application, what we need to return? We need to return the authentication token, the bearer token. You can say that bearer token we need to return, or you can say access token, right? That access token we need to return to the client, right? So now we have created this login view model with the required three fields with the proper validation attributes. Next, what we need to do? We need to create one action method which is going to render the login page. And this is a login. Login means it is related to account activity. Account activity means it should be created inside the account controller, right? So go to the account controller and create this action method. So this is going to my login action method. And now this login action method, it is the get version which is going to render the login page, or you can say login view. So let me create the view and click on this add button. So for this login view, what should be the view model? The view model is going to be login view model. And this view model is going to render three fields, two input fields, one checkbox and one button. And clicking on that button, right, it will submit the data to the post action method, post login action method, right? So here you can, this is my login view model. And here you can see form method post, right? So here I have not provided the controller and action name, but here also I can specify. So always better to specify the, right, what I can say controller and action name. So this is going to my, right, what I can say. So this is going to my action method name. And next, what I need to do, I need to specify the controller. Controller name is going to be account controller, right? So view model is a login view model. When this button is clicked, it will submit the data to the post login post action method of account controller, which we have not yet created. We'll create. And in this case, we are taking, right, we are taking the information about the email field, email data we are taking. We are also taking the user password, and this, remember me, this is going to be a checkbox, right? So with this information, once the user click on this button, it will submit the data to the login post action method of a account controller. So whatever changes we have done, let me also paste it here, right? So this is the things. Now what I need to do, I need to log in the user, right? For login functionality, what method I need to use? See, this is for user functionality, this is role functionality, and this sign-in manager class is responsible for user login, logout kind of functionality, right? So now what I need to do, I need to use another method, right? So currently, if you look at my account controller, so in this case also we are logging the user. So here we are logging the user using sign-in async. And we can use the sign-in async method only, right, when there is no password. If the password involvement is not there, then I can use the sign-in async method. But when the password involvement is there, then what method I need to use? I need to use this password sign-in async method. And this password sign-in async method is going to take few parameters. What are the parameter? First parameter is the username, what we are providing. Second parameter is the password field. Third parameter is the persistent. Persistent means do you want to create a persistent cookie or session cookie? And the fourth parameter is lockout on failure. For now, for time being, what is this lockout on failure? Just forget about it. Currently, we are not discussing anything about the user lockout. So if you want to see, we can give some basic information. That right, if you are working with any kind of a banking application, right? If you are working with any kind of a banking application, if you tried with the wrong password for continuously for 3 or 4 times, your account is going to be locked for some duration or not,
Yes, sir.
right? So how that is implemented? So that is implemented based on this lockout on failure concept, right? So what is that lockout on failure concept? We will discuss. For now, we are going to pass this parameter value as false, right? So don't think too much about lockout at this point of time. This lockout concept I am going to discuss in detail, right? So even if you working with a real time banking application, then after 6 months they are forcing you to update the password. How it is implemented? Everything I'm going to discuss, right? Whatever you are using in your day-to-day life. The same thing I'm going to discuss. Don't worry. So for now, we are going to use this three parameter: username, password, and each persistent. So whatever username value we have provided, whatever password value we have provided, and whether you want to create a persistent cookie or session cookie, that is for this parameter. And this value currently we are going to pass as false, right? So we don't want any lockout functionality. And once this function is executed, it is going to return task to sign in result. When awaited, right, it is going to return the sign in result, which is going to tell whether the sign in functionality successfully done or not. If successfully done, it is going to return is succeeded, is true, right? If not, then it is also going to return, right, whether the username password is mismatch, invalid, whether two-factor authentication is required for the sign-in functionality to be implemented, whether the user account is logged out or not, and everything it is going to return, right? So not only it is going to tell us that right sign-in happened successfully, but also if the username password is invalid, right, it is going to return that invalid credential. If the account, even you are providing some valid username and password, but your account is locked, then also it is going to tell that your account is locked. You cannot proceed for the login functionality. You cannot log in. Even you are providing valid username and password, but even though this is there, two-factor authentication is enabled. So these things it is going to return. It is going to tell that how should you proceed for the next step. So that is what this is taught, right? So let us proceed and let's see what are the things this post method is going to do. So now let me copy this one and paste it here. So now if you look at this, this is my login post action method. And I want this action method, right, to be accessed by anyone. So like this one, get it can be accessed by anyone. Right? So here you can say allow anonymous I'm using. But now, okay, let me, right, okay, let me clear this one, right? Suppose I'm not using this allow anonymous. What is this allow anonymous? I will discuss, but for now, remove this one. No issue, right? So this is my model. I'm checking whether the model data is valid. You have provided the username, password, and these two things. And then I'm calling this password sign in async method by passing the email. So this email you can consider it is the username. This is password, and this is remember me, and lockout feature is going to be false, right? So this information I have provided result. If succeeded means the user is logged in successfully. And once the user is logged in, what I need to do, I need to redirect it to the index action method of the home controller, right? Then if this is not true, then each it is going to return some kind of a Boolean property. So there is a parameter called require two factors. So this succeeded, require two factors, lockout, right? So these are nothing but one parameter of this result object, or you can say properties of this sign-in result. And these are going to be Boolean kind of value, so they can contain true or false. So if succeeded true means login successful. If succeeded not true, then it is going to check a required two factors. So is two-factor authentication is required? If true, then here you need to manage how to handle the two-factor authentication. We are not discussing two-factor authentication here, but as we progress, I'm going to show you how to implement a two-factor authentication. Is the user account is logged out? If you logged out, then how to handle that functionality? That's what you need to provide here. For example, you need to send one email to the registered email ID that your account is logged. If you want to unlock, then do this thing and do that thing. Please reset your password or contact to the admin. Whatever information you want to provide, that's what you need to provide. And if none of these are there, right, it is not successful. Two-factor authentication is not available and it is not logged out. That means you are provided some invalid credential. So in that case, right, what we need to do, we need to display this invalid login attempt. Here, guys, important thing. Don't tell that username is invalid. Don't tell that password is invalid because of the security reason. So whenever we are providing, right, whenever the validation is failed for the login functionality, always tell invalid user credential or always tell either username or the password is invalid. But don't tell which one is invalid because of the security reason, right? And then once we store this invalid login attempt error message, then we are redirecting to the same view with the model data. Clear, guys? Clear or
Yes.
then What I need to do, I need to use sign out functionality. So it is very simple. What I need to do, I need to create one method, and inside that method, what I need to do, I just need to call the sign out method, and this sign out method is going to set the right all the authentication cookie, right, which is set by the server automatically. Those cookies are going to be deleted. Once the cookies are deleted, again you need to sign in for your application, right? So what you need to do, just call this sign in out method. Once you call the sign out method, just redirect it to the right, what I can say, index action method of your home controller. Clear?
Yes.
Clear or not? Now, next
Yes.
what we need to do, we need to provide this register login and logout button, right? So we need to provide this register login and logout button. So what I'm going to do, let me go ahead. Go to the layout page. So this is my layout page. So, okay, this is my layout page. So what I have done here, right? So first of all, what I need to do, I need to use this method is sign in user. So this user is nothing but your principal object. If the current user is signed in, this method is going to return true. And for this purpose, right, what I need to do, I need to use a sign in manager service. So what I need to do first of all, I need to inject the sign in manager service to my right layout view. How you can inject the service? First of all, right, you need to inject this one. First of all, you need to specify the namespace where the sign-in manager class is available. Then what I need to do, this is sign-in manager. So this statement is very similar to this statement. So here you can see the framework is injecting the sign-in manager class. See, this statement is very similar to this statement, right? Whatever I have written here. This inject means the framework is going to inject the sign-in manager instance, right? So using the sign-in manager instance, we are checking whether the user, see, this user means it is a claims principal. This is your principal object, right? And this object is going to contain whether the user is signed in or not. If it is signed in, then this method is going to return true. And if it returns true, then what I need to do, I need to display the logout button. Here you can see the button is going to be right, right. So this is my what I can say account controller and the logout button. So here I'm displaying whatever the user identity dot name. So whatever the name of the user identity user, that name along with this logout option I'm displaying, and this is I'm putting inside a button. And when the user click on the submit button, it will submit the data to the logout to action method of home controller, which is decorated with right, what I can say, post action method. Now, if you look at this home controller, so this is my account controller, and inside this account controller, I'm having this logout button. So it is going to invoke this logout button, right? So this thing is going to be displayed if the user is signed in. If the user is not signed in, then what it is going to display? It is going to display the registered function, right? Registered, what I can say, it is going to display the registered button. On click on this registered button, it will navigate to the register action method of account controller, and also it is going to display the account button. And on click on this, this login button, and when you click on this one, it is redirecting to the login action method of account controller. So this is what right we need to do. So let me set the changes, and right, so whatever the changes we have done, let me put it here, right? So with these changes, right now run the application and see whether the functionality is working as expected or not. Right, so already this is logged in. I just click on this logout button. Now what I'm doing here, I'm clicking on this logout login button. So once I click on this login button, I can provide a valid. So what is the password I have provided? I think test at the rate 1234. And here I click on this login button. So invalid. So I mean some invalid password, sir. Okay, let me give capital ABCD at the rate 1234. What is that password? Guys, remember, does anyone remember what password we have provided?
I think it is uppercase A, B, C, D at 1, 2, 3.
Uppercase A, B, C, D at the rate 123. Not this one. A,
Capital
capital A,
A, then B, C, D,
at the
at the
rate
rate 1, 2, 3, 4.
1, 2, 3 or 1, 2, 3, 4.
capital 1, 2, 3, 4. That is what we have provided, right? And you can see once it is registered, it is showing this logout button. Yes or no? And once you click on this logout button, again it is displaying register. And using this registered button, you can create a new user, right? For example, I'm going to create a new user with info1, right? Info1, and here I'm providing the password as a test at the rate 1234. Here I'm providing the password as a test at the rate 1234 and click on this one. So this time you can see it is automatically logged in the user and that information it is displaying. Clear?
So how you will maintain the state of the logged in user for navigating different pages?
So that is automatically managed by the framework now. So what we are doing here, we are using some kind of a right sign-in functionality here, right? You can see I'm calling the sign-in async method. So this sign-in async method, right? It is see, if you remember, we have discussed something called session and cookies, right?
Yes, sir. Yes,
So
sir.
how the session and cookies are managed? So basically, we are setting some kind of a response header. Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Right. So this response header now it is going to be set by the sign-in async method. So the way session and cookies are working and whatever we have discussed, how to create right what you can say persistent cookies, how to create a session cookies, right? The same concept is applicable here. Whether to create a persistent cookie or session cookie, right? That is going to be decided by this each persistent value. If the value is false, it is going to be a session cookie. If the value is true, it is going to be a persistent cookie. And the same thing is also going to be done by this password sign in async method. If the password is valid, everything is valid, then based on this remember me functionality, it is going to create a session cookie or persistent cookie. And that session and persistent cookie will be sent to the client browser. And for the subsequent request, that client browser is going to send the same thing. And now this cookie, what we are sending, that cookie is going to data, right? That cookie is also containing the user object, user principal. And that user principal we are checking in our, right, what I can say layout page. So here we are checking whether the user is signed in or not. If the user is signed in, then we are displaying this thing, otherwise we are displaying this thing. So this is managed by the framework, right, identity framework what we are doing. So we are not explicitly setting the cookies and the sessions in this case, but that is internally managed by the framework. That is the reason why we are using identity. Clear?
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Right? So, and we have already discussed what do you mean by session cookie and what do you mean by persistent cookie. So no need to explain again because we have discussed this thing, right? Practically, right, when we discuss session and cookies, that is fine. Next topic, what I'm going to discuss, login. Okay. So custom password policy. It custom password policy means, right? So by default, right now, if you see, so whenever I'm creating one user, let me give this one user 2, and I'm simply passing 1, 2, 3, 4, and here I'm passing 1, 2, 3, 4. So what is the error message I'm getting? I'm getting password must be at least 6 character. Password must have at least one non-alphanumeric characters. Password must have one at least one lowercase and one uppercase. So this is what I'm saying. So now what I want to do is I want to customize this password policy. So how you can do this? So for this purpose, right, internally, the identity framework making use of this password option object, option class. And this password option class, you can say required length. By default, the value is 6. So whatever you're providing here, this is the default value. So default value is 6, required length 6, right? So if I'm not providing 6 length password, then this message it is displaying. The second one is required unique character 1. So definitely one unique character it is receiving, means at least one unique character must be there. We can change this to 2, 3, 4, whatever. Required non-alphanumeric, right? Non-alphanumeric means it should have contain at least one non-alpha numeric character, like what I can say, ABCD kind, A to Z kind of a things it should contain. Then you can say it requires some lowercase, some uppercase character. And if no lowercase character means small a to z, it should contain some uppercase character a to z. and it should contain some digit. So true means these things must be there, and if not, then it is going to give you some error. Now, what I want is right. Right. So, guys, remember this non-alphanumeric character. See, lowercase is A to Z, that's fine. Lowercase A to Z, uppercase A to Z, digit 0 to 9. So, this non-alphanumeric means what? It means some special character. Special character has at the rate, 8%. So this character must be there at least one. Otherwise, it is not going to be valid. So this is the default convention. Now, what I want to do is I want to modify. But why we are going to give a very strong password? What is the benefit of providing a strong password? Can anybody tell me what do you mean by brute force attack? Does anyone having any idea about this brute force attack?
Uh, some person which is trying to use multiple password at the same time, means in a loop,
Yes.
like it's trying
Right.
to get the
So
correct password.
basically by combining different combinations, right? The person trying to steal your password means your username and a combination of a password, right? First ABCD at the rate 123, ABC1, right? So different combination by writing some kind of a algorithm, they try to access your account, right? And at any point of time, if it is found that yes, this is valid, so that is the reason why, right? We need to provide a strong password. So brute force attack means what? Right? Brute force attack means it is a method of cracking a password by systematically trying every possible combination until the current one is found. This password is straightforward and doesn't explore any technical issues, right, in the encryption and authentication system. Rather that it relies on computing power to try all combination options, right? So if you want to avoid this kind of attack, then what you need to do, you need to create a strong password policy, right? So strong password policy. So let us see how we can customize the password. So what I want to do is password must be at least 8 characters. So currently it is 6 characters, and now I want 8 characters, and all other things it should contain digit, uppercase, lowercase, non-alphanumeric. See, guys, whenever I'm saying non-alphanumeric means what? Neither alphabet nor right, what I can say numeric. That means these are nothing but your special characters. So special characters, right? Special characters should be there, and it require at least 4 unique characters. So I cannot say a at the rate 1 2 nothing. Minimum 4 unique character must be there. So let us see how we can do this, right? So for this purpose, right, what I need to do, wherever we configure the identity, there we need to configure the password policy. So if you go to the program class, so here we have configured this identity. So I can comment this one, and here I can use this identity role, and here using the password using the options object, I can set the password. So options dot password required digit to true, required length 8, required non-alphanumeric special character true, required uppercase character true, required lowercase character true, required unique character. How many unique characters are there? 4 unique characters are required. So that is what we can prove. Other settings are also there, which we will discuss as we progress, right? So this is how we can set a custom password, right, for our ASP.NET Core identity. Clear or not?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So this one is also an example of custom, like a custom middleware type thing, right?
Yeah, this is a services.
Hmm.
So whenever I'm using this app method, this is middleware components. And
Hmm.
whenever I'm using builder.services, means this is the services.
Okay, thank you.
Right? So now, so these services means these are going to be take into consideration by identity when right validating the password policy, right? So we are just customizing the password policy, right? So with these changes, now let me run the application and see if I'm passing 6 characters, then is it showing me 8 characters or not? Right? Suppose I'm registering the user, providing this password input to, I'm providing capital A, B, at the rate 1 2 3 4. Capital A B at the rate 1 2 3 4. So now Let me give the same thing, capital A, small b, @ 1, 2, 3, 4. Now see whether we are getting the password. Password and confirm password. Okay, that means I have given some wrong. Capital A, small b, @ 1, 2, 3, 4. Here I'm providing capital A, small b, @ 1, 2, 3, 4. And click on this register button. So what I'm saying, password must be at least 8 characters. Okay, let me give capital A, small b, capital A, small b, @ 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Capital A, small b, @ 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And see. So now it is creating the account, right? So basically what exactly it means, that what 8 digits we have provided, they should be validated, right? So that is what it is, right, doing the validation. And if validation successful, it is going to log in the user and you can see the information. Clear, guys?
Sir, I have one doubt, sir.
Yes.
So these properties of password dot required alphanumeric, all these things, they internally have the logic. Earlier, we used to write every function.
Yes, yes, yes.
We used to write our
So
own logic,
this is
and
a
our regular
property.
expressions we used to use.
You just need to remember this is a property. Required digit, yes or no. If required digit is true, then whatever, right, then in that case, right, whenever I'm calling this, right, what I can say, login functionality, or you can say this create user account, at that time, they are going to check, right? So whatever the password we have provided here, is that password content, right, whatever the logic we have provided here, is that password
No,
content required digit? Is
no, my
that
question is
password?
that required digit will do all the numerics are available or not. So that logic where it is inbuilt. These are inbuilt functionalities, am I right, sir? Built-in
Obviously,
functionalities of the
obviously,
password.
this is in this case. So this is a create user async method. So when I call this method, it is going to create the user. That validation is going to be checked by this method, and that
Mhm,
validation for the password field, it is going to check, right, based on these things. So whatever settings we have provided, that
mhm,
settings is, right, whatever data we are passing, whether this data satisfying all the settings or not, that is
mhm,
going to be checked
mhm.
by this create async method. And who created
Got
this method? Who created this method?
Identity.
This create async method is created by ASP.NET Core identity. So that logic is already they have written as part of this create async method.
got it.
Clear?
Thank
Right. So here, what we are doing here? We are not managing the logic, data, and or database kind of things. They are provided some kind of services. Services means method. Our responsibility is to call the method and what that method expect. That is the input data. That what we need to pass and what that method return. Then we need to validate the data. Right? Whether the operation was successful or not. Clear?
you.
Clear, guys?
Yes.
Right, so this is how you can implement, right, what I can say, password, right, how you can customize the password. Next, one important thing, right, what we need to discuss, redirected to URL. Okay, so redirected to URL, let me directly explain this concept. So this is one, okay, let me modify the method, right? I have modified the method. Now you can see the index action method is decorated, right? So this home controller is having 4 methods. One is index, privacy, non-secured, and a secured method. Out of this 4 method, you can see I have decorated the index and this non-secured method with allow anonymous. Allow anonymous means what, any user, whether the user is logged in or not, they can access this index method, they can access this non-secured method. For this privacy method and the secured method, the user must be logged in. If the user is not logged in, then he cannot access this method. Clear?
Yes, sir.
Right? So we have already this view, index view is already there. And right, also we are having this, right, what I can say, privacy view, right? So we are also having this privacy view. So let me also provide some dummy data for this secured and non-secured view. So now what I'm doing here, this is my secured, this is my non-secured view. Okay, this is my non-secured view. And also, right, what I'm going to do, I'm going to create the secured view. So this is my secured view, right? So that is what I have done. All right. So now what I want to do is I also want to provide an application link for these things, right? So for the secured and right non-secured view. So what I need to do, I need to go to the layout page, and this is my layout page home, and what I can say, privacy. And here also I'm going to provide these two options, right? One is for secured method, and another one is for non-secured method, right? So this is my complete view. So what I'm doing, I'm providing this thing, right? I'm updating this section also, right? So that you will get the updated information right now. Now what I'm going to do. So I run the application, I log out the user, I'm accessing the home page, I'm able to access. I'm accessing the non-secure method, this is also working fine. But when I click on this privacy method, what exactly it is doing? It is redirecting to the login page. When I click on the secured method, it is redirecting to the login page automatically. Am I specify anything, right? When the user is not logged in, and if the user trying to access one action method for which authentication is required, if the user is not authenticated, then please redirect to the login action method of the account controller. Am I mentioned anywhere in my application? Guys, tell me, am I specified anywhere in my application that if the user is not logged in, and if the user is trying to access any action method for which authentication is required, then please redirect to the login action method. Am I specified anywhere in my application? Yes or no?
No.
No.
Automatically this is handled by the application. So how this is possible, let us try to understand. So for this purpose, right, this is handled automatically, but if you want to handle this manually, then what we need to do? So if you want to handle this thing manually, then what you need to do, you need to configure this, right? Configure application cookie method, and this service we need to use, and this service login path we need to set, right? Which action method I need to redirect when the user is not logged in, and when the user trying to access, right, the action method for which, right, authentication is required. So by default, it is going to be the account and login action method, and that's what we have discussed already. So if I'm not providing any login path, when the user is not validly logged in and trying to access the right any secured method which is for which authentication is required, automatically it is redirecting to the right login page, right? But what is the right? For example, if you do not have the login action method, a different action method is there, or a different controller is there which is handling the login functionality. Then in that case, what you need to do, you need to use this configure application cookie settings. And here you need to provide the path where you need to redirect it to the user whenever the user trying to access one action method for which authentication is required, but the user is not yet authenticated. Clear or not? Clear or not?
Yes.
So this is what you can specify manually. Otherwise, if you don't specify, then automatically the default one is account controller login action method, which we have already created in our application, account controller login action method. Now let us try to observe one thing. Suppose I'm buying some product, I'm adding the product into the cart, and whenever I'm going to make the payment, and if I'm not logged in, at that time it will ask me to log in or it will proceed for the payment. You go to the Flipkart website or Amazon website, you add some product into the cart, and whenever you are going to make the payment, at that time it will ask you, right, to log in or it will proceed for the payment without login.
For the login.
It will ask for the login. Similarly,
Mhm.
let assume we are accessing different pages and we have added some product, and now I want to proceed for the payment. For that purpose, let me I call this a secure method, and when I click on this method, it is not proceed for the payment. Rather than right, what he is doing, he is asking me to provide the login information. So what I'm doing here, I'm providing the information which using which I need to log in. So capital A, B, C, E at the rate 1, 2, 3, 4. I have provided and I click on the login method. So once I click on the login method, it is redirecting me to the which page, home page. But ideally, it should redirect me to the home page or it should redirect to the checkout page.
Checkout page.
Checkout.
Why? Because when I'm accessing the checkout page, I'm redirecting to the login page. So after the successful login, it should redirect it to the page from where I need to make the payment. So it should redirect it to the checkout page. But that is not happening here. So in situations like this, what we need to do, we need to use the concept called return to redirect URL. What I need to do, I need to use the concept called return to redirect URL. And and the good thing is that so this is managed by the application automatically. For example, right, currently I'm accessing this secure page, home page file. When I click on the secured method, you can see automatically it is pending a query string in the URL or not.
Yes.
Automatically it is appending a query string
Yes.
in the URL. What is that name?
Yes.
What is that query string parameter name? Return URL. It is appending the query string return URL automatically in the URL that is automatically taken by the framework. You do not need to do anything special, right? So whenever you are trying to access a page and for that page is authentication is required, then it will redirect to the login page. But while it is redirecting to the login page, then what it is also sending, it is also sending the return URL. So this return URL is nothing but the page which you are trying to access for which login is required. In this case, this is home and a secured home controller, secured action method. Now, if I got this login, if I handle this return URL correctly, then what I can do, then is it possible that to successful login, we can redirect to this return URL? Yes, that is possible. Let us try to understand how we can do this, right? So let us try to understand how we can handle this return URL effectively in my application, right? So let us try to understand. Right. So first of all, what I need to do, I need to create this return URL. So this is my return URL. So the same, see, you cannot change this return URL name. So inside this login action method, what I need to do, I need to create a variable of return URL. Let's store this default value now. And as I'm storing the default value null, let me initialize with the nullable operator. So basically, I'm capturing that return URL. So whatever the value the user is sending, that value I'm storing here. So once I store the value, then what I need to do, I need to store this value in the view data, and this view data I need to pass to the corresponding view. So for this purpose, what I'm doing, I'm creating a view data here, and this view data name is return URL, and whatever the value, it might be not, it might be the actual value that what I'm storing here. So once I store the view data here, then what I need to do, I need to go to the view, and inside this view, I need to store this value inside a hidden field. So inside the view, I need to store this return URL in a hidden field. So how I can do this? So here I can create a input type hidden. Name is going to be return URL. The value is nothing but whatever there in the view data. So that value I'm storing in the return URL. Now guys, tell me whenever I'm submitting this login page, submitting this login button, it will submit the data to the login action method of account controller along with this email password and remember me. Now, is it going to also submit this return URL value? Yes or no?
Yes.
Right? It is also going to submit this return URL value. So now if it is submitting this return URL value, then can I handle that return URL value here? Yes or no?
Yes.
Right? So what I'm doing, So here, exactly that is what I'm doing. I'm creating this return URL here. So now whatever the model data, those are going to be stored here. Whatever the return URL, that is what it is going to store here. Now in this case, right, in this case, what I need to do, once the operation is successful, then what I need to do? Here I need to check if, right, if this is not equals to string is null or empty. That means what? Now, if this return URL is not null or empty, and is this a local URL? So what is that method to check whether it is a local URL? Okay. So in this case, what I can do is URL dot is local URL. So local URL means is this URL related to the application itself? If this is fine, then what I need to do? I need to redirect it to this local URL. Right? So for that purpose, what I can do is I can make use of a redirect method and I need to redirect. Means if this value is not null or empty, and if it is a local URL means the URL what it is storing, it should be related to this application. It should not be an external URL. That's what it is going to check. And if it is fine, then it is redirecting to the particular URL. And if it is not a local URL or if this is empty or null, then in that case it is redirecting to the home page. Clear or not? Clear or not?
Yes, sir.
Right? So with these changes, now run the application and see whether it is working fine or not. Now I can access this one, no problem because these are non-secured method. When I call the secured method, it is asking for the authentication. So here I'm providing the valid credential capital A, B, C, T @1234 and click on the login button. So now you can see it is redirecting to the secured method or not.
Yes.
So now is that clear how to implement that return URL functionality in your web application?
Yes.
Any question, guys? Right. What is the use of local URL? Because this is right basically used to handle the open redirect attack. Right. Suppose you set some different URL. Suppose someone inspect the return URL field value and set some additional URL, that external URL that is going to be handled by the application. Okay, let us understand this thing. Right. For example, I access this one. So here what I'm going to do, I've provided some value. And here also I provided the actual value AB, sorry, capital A, B, C, D @ 1, 2, 3, 4. Now what I'm doing here, I'm opening the browser developer tool. And here I'm inspecting this field. So here you can see, expand this one, form is there. The hidden field is this one. Now instead of this URL, what I'm going to do, I'm going to store some external URL. So external URL means that value I'm going to replace with this one. So this value I have stored. Now you just tell me with these changes, if I click on this login button, if I'm not checking this whether the URL is a local URL or not, then to log in it will redirect to that URL, which I don't want. Right. So that is the reason why we are using this is local URL. So whatever I provided here, now click on the login button and you can see instead of redirecting to that external URL, it is redirecting to the home page of the same application. Why? Because in this case, this method is going to return me false. False means this part will not execute and it will execute this one. Clear? So this is called as open redirect web, right? So this open redirect web attack you can handle by using this each local URL method. Clear, guys?
Yes.
Right. So whenever you are developing the application, security is very, very important. So you have to manage the security concept, right? Very well. Clear or not?
Yes, sir.
Right. Next. Next, what I'm going to discuss, right? I'm going to discuss ASP.NET Core client-side validation and the server-side validation. For example, now whenever I click on this registered button, right, you can see this is my, what I can say, account controller. So this is my account controller registered post action method. So when I click on this button, right, in this case, it is submitting the data to the, right, what I can say, registered action method. So what exactly it means? It means the client-side validation is working or not?
No.
No. So, and second thing is that, so for validating the email address, whether the email address is already taken by someone else or not, that email uniqueness, remote validation is also not working, right? So for example, right, so in this case, I provided this thing, I'm coming to this part, right? So now what I'm doing, I'm taking this email ID and here I'm providing this email, I'm providing some, right, test at the rate 1234, test at the rate 1234. So this uniqueness, right? In this case, also it is taking, it is not checking remotely. Again, when I submit the data, it is going to check the uniqueness. That is, username is already taken. So can I handle this thing by using something called remote validation? We have already discussed this thing, how to enable client-side validation, how to implement remote validation. Am I correct? We have already discussed this thing or not?
Yes,
Guys, tell me.
discussed.
We have already
Yes.
discussed. So let us try to proceed and implement this thing in our application, right? How to enable right, client-side validation. So for client-side validation, what you need to do, we have to use three plugins. What are the plugins? We need to use, first of all, the jQuery plugin, jQuery validate plugin, and jQuery validate unobtrusive plugin. So these are the three plugins that what we need to, right, provide. So let me go ahead and provide these three plugins. So in the footer section of our layout file, you can see. So currently these are the plugins. So let me replace. So here jQuery main plugin I have provided, jQuery validated unobtrusive. This is the right bootstrap plugin, right? So this is what I have provided. So let me copy this one. Also, let me paste this code here. So these are the plugins what we have provided. And with this plugin, now the client-side validation should work, right? So now run the application. Click on this one and give here, right, what I can say. Yes, debugger pointer is there. Now click on this one. So again, the client-side validation is not working. So if the client-side validation is not working, means there is some issue in our code, right? So let us try to observe what is the issue. So in this case, right, so you can see what is the issue. So jQuery main, jQuery validated unobtrusive. These are the files we have provided. Then why it is not working? So go to this one, go to this library. So first of all, we need to provide this jQuery main.js file. So this is jQuery main.javascript file. That is fine. Yes, same. Then the next one is jQuery validation file. So this jQuery validate.main.javascript, that what we need to provide here. The second one. So this is fine. Right. The third one is jQuery unobtrusive file. This is going to be my unobtrusive JavaScript file, which should come here. So these are the three files what I need to provide. So okay, so there is some issue with the right unobtrusive main JavaScript file. That is the reason why it was not working. Right. So with these changes, now let me run the application this time and go to this register button. Now you can see the client-side validation is working. Fine. So let me also copy paste this code and paste it here. Clear, guys? So these three files you should put in a proper manner and they should exist, right? So if they are not existing, right, it will not work. Clear or not? So now the client-side validation is working as expected. Clear or not?
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Now what we need to do, we need to enable, right, what I can say, remote validation. So this username is already taken, this error message. Let's give me 1 minute. Right, so what we need to do, we need to provide this error message, right, when the user, right, entering the data, not when we are posting the data to the database. So how to enable, right, what I can say, how to create, right, remote validation. First of all, what we need to do, we need to create one action method, right, which is going to return me a JSON object indicating whether the validation is successful or not. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to this registration action method, and here I'm going to create one action method. So let me write allow both the get and post method here, HTTP get as well as HTTP post. So both I'm applying, so I can access this method using both the get as well as post attribute, right? So here what validation I need to do, I need to provide the validation for the email field. So whatever your property name, right, in the registered view model, so this is my registered view model, whatever your property name, or whatever your input field name, that name must be matched with this parameter name. So once it is matched, then what I'm doing here, I'm checking whether whatever the email we provided, is this email is already taken by someone else or not. So how you can check? So for this purpose, what I'm using user manager. So this is email. Email means I need to check in this ASP.NET users table. ASP.NET users table means which manager class I need to use. I need to use a user manager class. So this user manager class provide one method called find by email async. So I need to provide this email ID, and it is going to check whether this email is already taken by someone else. I mean, it is going to find the user entity which is matched with this email. And if it found one user entity with this email address, that is already, this email ID is already taken by one user. And in that case, right, what we need to do, we need to return this error message that email is already in use. And if this message, right, and this message what we are returning, that is going to be displayed. Second thing, if this email ID is all not taken by anyone, that means it will return me null. Null means what? I need to return true, that this email ID is not taken by someone else. So you can go ahead and you can use this email to register the user. So what, first of all, what I need to do, I need to create one action method, and this action method, right, it is going to validate as a remote validation. Then what I need to do, second thing is that, right, what I need to do means I need to use the remote attribute, and I need to set this thing, right? So what I need to do, I need to go to the registered view model, and here I need to apply the remote attribute. So whatever the action method and whatever the controller, that what we need to space, and this is going to my remote attribute. So now using an asynchronous JavaScript AJAX call, it is going to check whether the email ID is taken by someone else or it is available. If there is some validation issue, so whatever error message we are returning, that is going to be displayed in the UI. So let us proceed and see whether it is working fine or not. Okay, so this is my, so what I'm doing here, I'm using. See, immediately I'm getting this message or not,
Yes.
right? So this is how you can implement, right, what I can say, remote validation in your application. So is that clear? Clear or not? Right.
Yes.
So, right, so that's it for today. Tomorrow, what we are going to discuss, we are going to discuss how I can customize the ASP.NET users table. So currently you can see, right, ASP.NET users table containing these columns. Now to this column, what I want to do is I want to add first name, last name, date of birth, any column you want as per your business requirement, how you can add. And then I'm going to start the role management. So how to create role, how to assign roles to user, how to add or remove users from role, right? How to implement role-based authentication, how to show and hide navigation menu based on the role, right? All these things we are going to discuss in tomorrow session. Clear, guys?
Yes. So it
Any
will be
difficult? Yes.
so it will be same in web API, right? Only we have to taken care of the JWT
See,
token.
uh,
That's
see, you have to remember. So in web API, do you have any kind of a remote validation concept?
no.
right? So that is what not possible, right? So you have to remember. So whenever I'm developing one web application and whenever I'm developing one web API application, what is the difference between them? So why I'm taking this MVC project? Because everything is going to be available. So what I have told you from the day one. So whenever we are registering, right, we can use add identity and add identity core. So add identity means full complete package, everything you can do. Add identity core means limitation. Limitation means everything is not possible. For example, this remote validation, this client side validation, this login, authentication to cookies, session cookies, right? So this is not possible in web API. So in web API, what is there? So you will provide one endpoint where the user will register. So what endpoint we need to provide? We need to provide this registered action method, right? And if the
Yes.
registration is successfully, we need to return that yes, user is created. And if fail, this message we need to return. So that registered one endpoint we need to create. And whatever data you require, you can accept as a model. Then second method, what we need to provide this redirect functionality. This is not the job of web API. That is going to be handled by the client application. How that client application will handle that, it is based on that framework. For example, if you are using Angular, how will handle that return URL? That will be the responsibility of an Angular developer. Its functionality, what I'm showing here, it is specific to MVC application. So in the MVC, we can handle this functionality. So this login view, I'm not going to display in my web API application. So in web API application, what is required? This login model is required. This return redirect URL, this is not required. So what I need to do? I need to enable this login functionality model. Here also I need to write the code, right? If the login is successfully, this redirect to this action method is not required, and all these things we do not need to check. So what we need to do? We need to create the cookie. Sorry, I'm saying cookie. So we need to create the JWT token, and that token we need to return. If two-factor authentication is required, then we need to send the OTP to his registered email ID and a mobile number, and we need to tell that the two-factor authentication is required, and this is the cookie, right? And in this, right, in the next step, you need to call that method. So that is what they have to remember, right? If two-factor authentication is enabled, then after login page, what action methods to be called, that is going to be taken. So that is what we are also going to discuss. If lockout is there, we need to send one email, and we also need to return the appropriate message that the user cannot be, we cannot generate the JWT token for the user because the user account is locked. If any error, that error message we need to return. So this logout functionality is not required, right? And this is email available is not required. Why? Yes, if you want to provide this message, that is fine. So for that purpose, what they need to do? They need to call this is email available asynchronously from their right page. So currently with the MVC application, this thing automatically handled. But if you are integrating with Angular and something else, they have to make an AJAX call, and they have to pass that value to here, and this method is going to return whether the email is already taken or right, true or false, or whatever message you want to return, you can return, and accordingly they are going to handle the thing. Clear?
Yes. Yes.
Right? So that is what. And you can also see what I'm saying here. So you can also start developing the same concept. You can create one registered action method. And in that action method, you don't want to provide this sign in redirect to action. Rather than what you can return at this point of time, whatever the user is registered, that registered information, what is his name, what is his username, email ID, right? What is his user ID? This information you can return, right? Instead of a right cookie, that user ID you want to return, that what you can return. So currently this login functionality we are providing, but we have not yet implemented the right, what I can say, that JWT token. So what you can do is here, instead of this, you can return one object indicating whether the login is successful or not. Login successful is login, true or false. That kind of message you can return. And when we'll discuss JWT authentication, at that time you can replace that logic with the JWT logic. Clear?
Yes. Yes.
Right. So that is what side by side you can implement. And here you need to use right, your brain, right? What are the things I can do and what are the things I cannot do? Means that sign-in functionality is not required at all by MVC Web API application, because Web API is stateless.
Stateless means what? There is no session, there is no cookie concept at all. Every request what is coming from the client should contain all the information to validate the client. And for the best approach to validate the client nowadays is using JWT tokens. And we'll discuss
Yes.
what, right? What is JWT token? What is refresh token? What is client validation? Everything we are going to discuss. Even if you are not using JWT, how we can implement basic authentications, right? Every concept, right, related to security, we are going to cover. Don't worry. Clear?
Yes, and this is the reason why I'm interested in more in web API, because now every like banking and every kind of industry is separating from web API. It's not, they are not using
Yes,
MVC.
see,
They are
that is fine.
separating in.
Obviously, that is fine. But you just tell me. So suppose you got the opportunity to work with a web application using Angular, React, MVC, whatever. So in that application, how you can handle the UI part? That is also important or not? So if you know, yes, there is something called the return URL, and there is a opportunity and there is a possibility that we can handle this kind of scenarios. Right? Whatever I'm discussing here using a return URL in MVC application, the same functionality you might get, right? Or same feature you need to implement in Angular. If you know that there is a feature called return URL, or if you know how to implement it in using MVC framework, then implementing that in Angular framework is not a big deal. You can easily implement. Right? So this is the reason why I'm showing every possibility, right? So for example, why I'm showing this thing, right? For example, why I'm showing this register login, right? Once the user is logged in, this buttons are going to be hide, and that right logout button will come, because see, for web API application, this is not required. But if you got a chance to work with the UI part, then what you will do? So if you know this kind of logic is there, then you can easily implement. Logic is important rather than right how to implement. How to implement code, right? Code you will get here and there, right? You can search internet, chat GPT, you can search Stack Overflow. Many other websites are there. They are providing. But what is important? You should have the logic. So what I need to do, I need to check if the user is logged in. I need to display this one. If the user is not logged in, I need to display this one. So if the user role is this one, I need to display this menu. If the user role is not this one, I don't want to display this thing. The UI part is also important. That is the reason why I have started discussing using both the options, right? So, right. See, if I'm going with a web API, then I cannot explain this thing, right? How this return URL is working, how this sign out button is working, right? How we can, right, configure our layout files to display the respective button, right, based on the right logged in, whether the user is logged in or not, right? How we can provide that if the user is logged in, then he can access this page. If the user is not logged in, then I need to redirect the user to the login page. So this kind of things I cannot explain, or I cannot give you the clarity using web API. That is the reason why I'm discussing this concept using MVC, but side by side, I'm also discussing, right, how you can implement the same functionality using ASP.NET Web API, ASP.NET Core
Yes.
Web API. And coming to that JWT token and all these things, this is also as part of our syllabus. Don't worry, I'm going to explain those concepts in a detailed manner. Right. So see,
Sure.
the point that what you need to remember, whatever concept I'm going to explain, it should be right. I'm going to discuss in depth. So you will get the clarity. Clarity is important. How to implement is not a big deal. But what is happening behind the scene is the big deal. Clear?
Yes, sir.
So,
Right?
are you going to tell about the federation also, kind of the
Sorry.
Bit
federation,
like.
identity federation, like with the third party things?
So external authentication you are talking about, right?
Yes, yes.
Yes. So see, already see what I'm saying. Definitely, right? So what I'm saying, if you remember, I'm going to implement at least 2 to 3 external authentication. Google, I will implement. Facebook, I will implement. Microsoft, I will implement. Similarly, right, how to integrate LinkedIn authentication, how to integrate right Twitter authentication. You can try yourself. So at least 3 external authentication I'm going to implement, and if you understand how to implement it 2 and 3, rest you can easily implement. I'm going to show you at least 3 external authentication provided. That is what we are calling as open ID, right? So as
Okay.
part of this training program, right? So I think you have not gone through the syllabus, right? So they are part of our right syllabus only, right? So where is the identity syllabus? So this is what you were talking about, right?
Yes, yes.
So this is definite. See,
Okay.
what I'm saying, I'm starting identity means I will make you mastering in identity. Whatever concepts
Okay.
related to identity, every concept I'm going to discuss, starting from role-based authentication, claim-based authentication, how
Yes,
to
yes.
add roles, how to add claims to user, how to add claims to
Sure.
role, right? Every concept I'm going to discuss.
Thanks. I want to ask about the claims and role-based. Thanks.
It's everything. So why you are asking, right? You should go and check the syllabus first. And what I'm doing here, I'm going step by step. Till now, I have discussed up to this point. So I have
Okay.
provided the syllabus in a systematic, in a well organized manner, and I'm simply following the syllabus. I'm going through
Thanks.
the chapter by chapter, and every chapter I'm going to discuss. See how to implement client-side and remote validation. I have shown you how to implement return URL. I have shown you how to implement custom password policy. I have discussed how to implement login and logout functionality. I have discussed, and how to register new user. That is also I have discussed. So tomorrow we are going to start from chapter number 10. And once time comes, right, and once time comes, I'm also going to discuss this external authentication. So whatever number of chapters I have provided till this account locked out functionality, at every concept I'm going to discuss.
Thanks. So you said one group is there where we are discussing about any questions related to previous things.
See, that group is already there now. So you have not yet joined that ASP.NET Core discussion group.
No, sir. Could you
Okay,
please
okay.
add
I will
detail?
share the link, right? I will share the link
Yes.
today. Right, there are two groups. One is for public, anyone can join, and another one is only for the right students who are enrolling to my session. So two discussion group are there. I will share the link. You can join those.
Thank you.
Anyone having any more question, guys? Thank you, guys.